It's a money fight, I get you, and you want to make money. But at some point in time, if you keep telling us that you're taking boxing seriously and you want to be recognized as a big-time boxer / fighter, you're going to have to fight somebody closer to your age, who is a contender at the very least.
Fight announcement, another circus act, another clown show. A fight between Jake Paul and Gervonta Tank Davis has been announced as an exhibition.
That I couldn't believe, that was too insane and honestly just baffling to think would be a real fight in 2025. Remind you that combat sports are the craziest sports on the planet.
The moment this fight was announced, even veteran analysts couldn't believe their ears. Stephen A. Smith was the first to explode. Stephen A. Smith did not hold back on the announcement of the Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis fight, calling it nothing short of a circus. He acknowledged Jake Paul's ability to promote himself and turn fights into global spectacles, but stressed that boxing deserves better. According to him, Jake should at least face fighters who make sense as matchups rather than chasing shock value. For Smith, this fight highlights entertainment over true competition.
Always been a fan of Jake because I think that what Jake tries to do for the sport of boxing, I think people don't realize the importance of him being able to promote for himself and not being reliant on the promoters who I believe has held the sport hostage. The only critique I've ever given Jake, I just want Jake to fight boxers. Like Nate Diaz, we know his reputation. We know the man can fight. We know in the octagon he could be something special. But we know you breathe on him, he starts bleeding.
It's a fair critique. And you know what? He should fight boxers, but then again, should he? Because I'll tell you why. If you're a human who can rake in $6 to $10 million fighting people that you know you're going to beat, and you want to build a resume and a record that's impressive with a good highlight reel, you got to be strategic about this shit. Jake's 25, 26. He's got so much time.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I get where you coming from. All I'm saying is, we don't know your skill set because you haven't been in there with anybody really.
Analysts argue that Jake Paul's latest matchup is just another circus act in his boxing journey. They believe most of his fights lack any real logic or competitive balance, designed more for attention than sporting credibility. Instead of testing himself against opponents who make sense stylistically or by weight class, Jake continues choosing unusual fights. To many experts, this pattern makes his bouts entertaining spectacles, but not serious boxing contests.
Jake Paul won the fight. But yeah, that was that. This time, Jake Paul is to take on Tank Davis. Tank Davis, he was recently in the news for being arrested for a domestic violence incident involving one of his kids' mother. He was alleged to have slapped her about the place. The charges were later dropped, to be fair to him. But yeah, that was when he was last in the news. What is interesting is just a couple of months ago, Tank Davis was saying openly that he'd lost his passion for boxing and that he wanted time away from the sport. There was speculation that he might even retire as he was experiencing extreme mental fatigue from boxing, depression, and there were mental health concerns over him. However, I guess the opportunity to earn a truck full of money, fighting a completely worthless exhibition fight against Jake Paul was enough to make him change his mind about boxing. Funny that, isn't it? But you know what? I'm not even going to waste your time or mine critiquing this utter nonsense. Suffice to say that this so-called fight we're talking about is an exhibition, and it pits Jake Paul, who is a cruiserweight, by the way, weighs in excess of 200 pounds, and Tank Davis, who is, he was the WBA lightweight champion, who weighs in at about 135 pounds when he fights. So that's a disparity of some 65 pounds. In old money, that's about 4.5 stone. There's also a significant difference in height. Jake Paul is roughly, 6'1", 2. Gervonta Davis is 5'5" at best. So, there's a height disparity there of some.
Magazine tweeted the stunning news that has the boxing world buzzing. Breaking! Jake Paul will face Gervonta Tank Davis on November 14th at State Farm Arena in Atlanta. The exhibition, live on Netflix, was confirmed by insider Mike Carpenter. Talks for Paul to face Anthony Joshua had reportedly collapsed over network issues. Paul's last fight took place at 200 pounds, while Davis is a champion at 135. This shocking matchup has fans debating size differences, entertainment value, and the unpredictable direction boxing keeps taking. Jake Paul, meanwhile, continues pushing his own agenda, investing his own money, creating his own buzz, and shaking up the sport in ways few imagined. While many dismiss his approach as unorthodox, others admit it's brought fresh eyes to boxing. This latest matchup, which nobody thought would ever happen, proves how far he's willing to go.
And we've seen that Jake will kind of bounce in between doing these entertainment fights and then, trying to push toward his goal of ingraining himself in the sport of boxing, and kind of does both of them. So it's kind of a weird place to be, because he wants the respect of the boxing fans and the boxing hierarchy and hardcore boxing people, but at the same time, he'll gain some of that and then lose some of it. It's like a seesaw of his fights. Like one fight and be like, okay, that's a real fight, or that's a real fight. And he'll go and he'll win the fight. Julio Cesar Chavez, real fighter, maybe past his prime, whatever, but Jake goes and wins that fight pretty easily, and then gets a lot of respect, gets a lot of the boxing hardcore love. And you have these talks about him fighting Anthony Joshua, and that was going to get even more respect. More people were like, that's fucking crazy. What are you doing? Myself included. That seemed like a massive risk, but a lot of people were like, okay, fair play. Anthony Joshua, that's a real heavyweight. Jake wants to fight him. He's a psycho, but fair play. And then you announce this one, and it's like, well, that's the same thing people have been saying about Jake for years. So it's a weird spot to be in for him, for sure. But I talked about this not being the first choice, and I don't think it was, because Coppinger reports next that talks for Jake Paul to face Anthony Joshua collapsed over network issues. Now, we had all heard the talks, and they were pretty public, from Eddie Hearn, from Jake. Nakisa Badarian, Jake's manager, was over in the UK on, I think, Sky Sports, talking about the fight and saying how it was a real possibility and they were really starting to work on it. And now Mike Coppinger says that the talks for Jake and Joshua fell apart over broadcast.
Later, Jake Paul confirmed the fight through his Instagram, writing, "Size versus speed, power versus precision. One will rise and one will fall from Atlanta. Live globally only on Netflix." Friday, November 14th. His post sent shockwaves online, making the exhibition a worldwide talking point. Teddy Atlas, one of boxing's most respected voices, spoke openly about Jake Paul's rise and the sacrifices behind it. He acknowledged that regardless of critics, Paul deserves credit for securing the fights he wants. Atlas said this doesn't happen by accident. It takes persistence, risk, and relentless promotion. He also admitted that Jake has genuinely improved his boxing skills, training for years with elite coaches, sparring pros, and proving he can handle himself. While purists may mock him, Atlas believes the criticism overlooks Jake's growth and effort. In his view, Paul's journey shows how far dedication can take you, even from YouTube to the boxing ring.
That I gave too much credit to Paul. Why? He's done a hell of a job to put himself in this position. He sold himself. He sold his dream. He took his dream. He took his idea. He put it out there, and he made it happen. Give him credit for that. And he made it happen. And he took risk along the way. Yeah, he picked his spots. He's in the driver's seat. He gets to pick his spots. He's the one bringing the money. He's the one promoting. Yeah, he's the name. He made himself that, coming from where he came from, with all his followers and the whole thing, and just the uniqueness of what he was doing. But he has learned along the way. He's not a top guy yet. No, I don't know that he ever will be. He didn't have that amateur background and the things that you usually need to be a top guy. But he has improved. He is a work in progress. He is a guy that you got to give him credit that he's respected the sport. He went out there, he's worked hard at it, and he's gotten himself into this position. Having said all of that, this might be a step too far. Now, when I say it, I try to be responsible. I've been in this game 50 years, so I know where not to step. Where you could twist an ankle, or worse, you could break a leg or fall down. When I say that with the understanding too that
the team at TalkSport reacted strongly to the announcement of Jake Paul versus Gervonta Davis, calling it a completely unbalanced matchup. Their biggest concern? The massive weight gap. Davis, a natural 135-pounder, has dominated his division with explosive knockout power. But stepping up against Paul, who walks around at nearly 195 pounds, feels unrealistic to many analysts. The panel questioned how such a fight could ever be fair or meaningful given the extreme size difference. This echoes a common criticism of Paul's matchmaking, that his opponents are often smaller, past their prime, or from outside boxing. Davis may be in his prime, but this fight is anything but equal.